there have been a series of experiments, and they're called different things, the different variations, and it's the quantum eraser experiment. Basically what it is, and I'm not going to go into too many details because I know a lot of people don't really care, but like, you have a beam splitter and you have entangled photons, and they go to different detectors, and sometimes they bounce off sometimes they're made to bounce off a mirror, sometimes they're made to go through the mirror. That's the beam splitter. And one of the entangled pairs gets detected here, and then the other one keeps going through the circuit and it gets detected elsewhere. And it's this, oh, it's all very complicated. And I actually broke it down in detail in one of my previous videos. And so you can just go do that if you're kind of wanting to know the stricter details. But what I like to do, because I think it's more useful for something like this, for what we're doing now, is just kind of give you a simplified analogy of basically how it works, right? And so basically how it works is that you have a little photon, and it's going down this little path. And then there are two corridors, and it can go down one corridor, corridor A, or it can go down corridor B. And then at the end of the corridors, it goes back down the hallway to one path, one hallway, and then into the detector. And so what the Australian National University found, the point of it is this. At the detector at the end of the hallway, right? So if no one's looking to see which corridor the photon went through, it goes through both corridors as a wave, right? And then the wave interferes, the wave goes through both corridors and then interferes with itself at the end, where it smacks into the wave coming through the other corridor, and then you get that interference pattern on your detector at the end of that hallway, right? If you look to see, are you going through hallway 1? Are you going through hallway 2? Or corridor 1 or corridor 2? Then it only goes through either corridor 1 or corridor 2. So then it acts as a particle. And it goes through one corridor or it goes to the other corridor. But here's the crazy thing. And this is the thing that a lot of people who think that they know all, and who leave all these stupid comments under my videos that are annoying me, don't know, don't look up, don't comprehend, or just they get confused by it maybe, so they just block it out. That's the cognitive dissonance kicking in. And so what studies have now shown, research has shown, the Australian National University experiment was very cleverly done. What they found is that if you put a gate in corridors 1 and 2, okay? What you do is you leave the gates open and you let the photon go through. And you don't monitor which corridor it's going through. Then the photon will go through both corridors, and then it interferes with itself, right? And then it hits the detector. But if after the photon has gone through the corridors, okay, and now it's hitting towards the one hallway before hitting your detector. So after it's gone through the corridor, you close one of the gates. Let's say you close the gate in corridor 1. What you find is the particle will only have gone through the other corridor as a particle. Even though when it was traveling, both corridors were open. So you should have gotten a wave going through both corridors, interfering with itself, right? But if you close the gate after the particle will have traveled through that space, then the outcome that you get is as though the particle sees that the gate is closed, and so that's the path history that it creates. So basically what appears to be happening is the photon either behaves as a particle or as a wave, and its behavior depends on your observation of it. But the tricky thing is that its behavior is only determined in the moment that you make that measurement. And the information that it takes into account is only the information that exists in the system in that moment. So when you detect it, then it decides in that moment its behavior, whether it behaved as a particle or as a wave. And it seems to look, okay, what is the information in the system? And then it makes its choice based on the information in the system in that moment. And then it overlays a path on the past. So that's why more and more physicists are kind of trending towards believing in the simulation theory, because it seems to suggest that the path history is overlaid onto the past, that it's not created in the past as it's going forward, that it's actually being created in the moment you're detecting it, and that information gets written onto the past, right? And there are more complicated variations of the quantum eraser experiment that do the same thing in a complicated way, but they're showing the same thing, that basically the behavior isn't chosen until you detect it. And once you detect it, then that behavior is kind of written over onto the past, so that the past conforms with however the system is set up in the moment of detection. It's wild, right? And so, but here's the interesting thing though. In the Australian National University's design, you have two sets of detectors. The first set of detectors, humans aren't reading the information from those. They're reading the information from the second set of detectors, okay? But the first set of detectors are still detecting, but they're not collapsing the superposition state. So the first set of detectors is interacting with the particles, but it's still suspended in a superposition state. And then the second set of detectors, they're the ones where the choice of behavior, particle or wave, is being made, because that's where the human measurement is being taken. And so that proves that it's not enough for the detector to interact with the particle, for the particle to collapse out of a superposition state, right? That's the clever part of that experiment, is that it shows it's not just a measuring device interacting with a superposition wave, particle, photon or electron or buckyball, if you will, but in these experiments, let's just stick to photons for now. That's not enough that they interact with a detector. It doesn't collapse a superposition. It's only the second set that we're monitoring, that we're reading. And they know this because of I don't want to explain it, because I did in that video 6 months ago, maybe a year ago now, and it took me half an hour. You know, I try to be concise when I talk, but I'm so bad at being concise, because I'm always kind of looking at the complexity and different things and the nuances and ideas, and I always feel like, because for me, those things are very important. Because they affect the validity of the information and they affect the interpretation of it. And so I always kind of think that those things should be important to everyone. So rather than say something really concise, I tend to have to give all the context and all the details and all the nuance, and it takes me forever. Especially for complicated things. But you don't have to take my word for this. You can go and you can Google. Don't do wiki search, you guys. That is not a credible source of information, right? Because anyone can edit it.